Mike Williams, a New York Jet. Holy cow. We're going to get to all of the latest on the newest signing for the New York Jets and what the organization is going to do after the big move at wide receiver. Plus, some little inside information on what's going on with Jadeveon Clowney. We're going to get to all of that and more on a Wednesday edition of Football with Faria.
It's time for Football with Faria.
You got to get the offense right, and you got to be able to be aggressive. They put up 14 against the secondary. That is driving me up a freaking wall right now.
Now here's your host, Nick Faria.
All right, everybody. Welcome inside Football with Faria this Wednesday, gloomy Wednesday. It turned from sun to rain in a matter of hours for those of you near Bayside, New York. A lot to get to today. Obviously, a lot of big news coming out for the New York Jets. The top story of the week, though, has to be Mike Williams, a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver, 6'4", former top 10 overall pick of the Los Angeles Chargers, is now a member of the New York Jets. He signed a one-year, $15 million deal around this time yesterday. The Jets brought him into the fold today. He spoke to the media. We're going to get to all of that in just a little bit. But when you want to talk about what this signing does, and I was, for those of you that have been following along, I was pretty much on every single show yesterday. I was on Jake Asman's show. I was on Play Like a Jet. JetCast, trying to answer as many questions I possibly could on the signing. And this is an astronomical move. There's no other way to put it. There's no other way to put it. This is the kind of move that championship teams make. This is the kind of move that when you look going into the playoffs, you look and say, thank God we made this move. Thank God we made this move. Just nothing else about it. Because Garrett Wilson is a number one wide receiver. He's absolutely a number one wide receiver. So what you needed in this offense is a competent offensive line. You wanted to make sure the offensive line was situated at a point that you could trust for 17 games. And then you needed to address the second receiver spot, the number 2 option on this offense. And the Jets did it. Again, we can talk about, oh, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. When free agency started, I remember answering people's questions of why the Jets weren't doing anything and why Joe Douglas was a terrible GM. And in a week and a half, the Jets have solved all of their concerns. All of their major concerns are gone. Do they still need to address safety? Yes. Do they still need to address the backup running back role? Yes. Maybe even add another receiver. Potentially another pass rusher. But the 2024 starting lineup is set on both offense and defense. It's absolutely set. You don't have to worry about it. There's no more questions. All you need to do, Jet fans, is focus and celebrate what has been a terrific offseason. I'm going to get to some of these points a little bit for the rest of the program. For those of you guys jumping on for the first time, thank you guys so much. Welcome to the show. You guys want to call in, ask some questions. The link in the description in YouTube down below will give you the link to call in. We'll also take some comments and questions throughout today's show as well. So any appreciation, likes, shares, whatever you got to do, it's always greatly appreciated. Last time on Monday, we had a show go over 1,000 views. Love to see that continue. So far, a nice steady stream of people jumping on. But I look at the Mike Williams signing, and instantly, my mind turns to the NFL draft. Because like I said, and I think most Jet fans agree with me in the thought process that if you're the Jets, you have your starting 24 ready to go, or starting 22 ready to go. You know who's starting on offense. You know who's starting on defense. The big question is depth. and where you get depth is the NFL draft. And that's where the big question comes up for the Jets. What do you do with a 10th overall pick? What do you do? Do you take the best player available, if that means Olu Fashanu or Brock Bowers, maybe even Romeo Dunze? Do you take one of those guys? Or do you trade back, accumulate a second-round pick, and say, hey, we're good to go. We'll get the best player available with the 20th overall pick, 24th overall pick, get a second-rounder, and we're going to get multiple bites of the apple to produce and have a quality roster that is not just predicated on who is starting at quarterback or how many injuries an offensive line has sustained. Think about it this way, guys. For those of you jumping on today, if the Jets were to go out and they were to trade back at 10 to, let's say they trade with Philadelphia. It's the one popular trade that just makes sense to me because Philadelphia has the draft capital in the second round and they have a need at corner. Let's say the Jets trade to 22. They pick up a second rounder, like the 50th overall pick. If the Jets come out of this draft with Troy Fautanu and Christian Haynes in the second round, and they keep their third round pick and they draft maybe another receiver, they draft a pass rusher, whatever it is, but Christian Haynes and Troy Fautanu, to add to the depth of Carter Warren, Max Mitchell, and Wes Schweitzer. Can you tell me that this is not the deepest offensive line that the Jets would have had in over a decade if they go that route? There is no other way to put it. And again, a lot of Jet fans, rightfully so, they're caught up in the excitement that has been brought on by the Mike Williams signing, the sandwich by New York Jets Matt, the hoopla surrounding Jadeveon Clowney. I want to get to Clowney in a little bit. But the best path forward, and I'm always going to say this, the best path forward is protecting your future. And that can go one of two ways. That can be addressing the offensive line consistently or addressing the quarterback. And the Jets are going to need a quarterback, whether it be this year, next year, the year after that. They need to position themselves to be in a spot to acquire a top quarterback, whether it be in the draft, free agency, whatever it is. Whatever it is. They need to have a plan in place after Rodgers. And there was one point today, I saw Paul Esden, Boyd Green talked about it just a few hours ago, I think, about the possibility, I think Albert Breer spoke on this as well, the possibility of the Jets taking a quarterback in round one or taking a quarterback within the first two picks of the draft. Whatever that is, whether it's the second round, the third round, wherever that is, they would take a quarterback. And there are people that are going to be very upset with that thought process. There's going to be people very, very angry at that thought process. But if you give the coaching staff and the organization patience and understand the reason for the move, if they communicate with Aaron Rodgers and Rodgers is on board, would this not protect the Jets for the long term? I'm not saying that taking Drake May, should he fall to 10, I don't think he's going to fall to 10, but should he fall to 10, would that not make sense for the Jets? Draft Drake May, let him sit for 2 years while Aaron Rodgers is dicing teams up with a ready playoff roster. And then you can reset that roster with a quarterback on a rookie contract. It makes a lot of sense. And people are going to be angry about it. I'm not saying I agree with Breer. But what the draft does now for the Jets is it allows them to be flexible. It allows them to take the best player available. And the best player available could be Drake May. It could be Brock Bowers. It could still be Olu Fashanu. But the Jets need choices. They need options. And the beauty of where they are right now is all they need to do is go best player available. I said this yesterday on JetCast. Wherever they do, whatever they do, wherever they go, any selection that is made that is not a defensive player is an A-plus draft. because either they add weapons, they address the depth of the offensive line, or they take the quarterback of the future. And each particular way, you are protecting yourself in the short and long term with any decision that is made. Any decision. You cannot get any better than what the Jets are doing right now. In the free agency, preparing themselves for the draft, 100%. I want to ask you guys this question as well. If the Jets were to take a quarterback at the 10th overall pick, if Drake May were to fall, not saying it's going to happen, not saying they should do it, but if Drake May falls to 10, would you, taking over for Joe Douglas in this instance, would you take Drake May over Brock Bowers or Fashanu or a trade back? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. You guys want to call in as well. Always appreciated. But again, it's the Mike Williams saga. It lasted a day. And this is one thing that I was very surprised with. A lot of people were talking about it on Tuesday. I spoke up on it for my Monday show, and I instantly said that I didn't think Williams was going to sign a deal the minute he walked into the building, and the Jets were going to allow him to walk elsewhere and see if he could get a better deal elsewhere. I thought that was going to be the case because the Jets need to open up some cap space. There's other options that they have at the receiver market. There's other questions they have to solve. And if you're Mike Williams, you had interest from the Pittsburgh Steelers. You had interest from the Carolina Panthers. There were teams looking to pay you money. And you instantly chose the Jets. Now, that tells me a couple of different things. For the pro-Joe Douglas crowd, for the people that were angry with Joe Douglas about not making moves and everything else, this is the example that Douglas can be aggressive with the right player. If they went aggressive and signed Calvin Ridley for the deal that he had with Tennessee, that would be an overpay. But because you've got Mike Williams, a 1-year deal for $15 million, up to $15 million, you're now in a position to stay aggressive in free agency, stay aggressive in the draft. There's very little negativity here, but it tells you that Joe Douglas knows what he's doing. This is not some bad general manager who's trying to just hang on for dear life for his job. That's not the case here. Douglas is an experienced executive. He knows how to make trades. He knows how to make signings. He has done his job. And if the Jets were to falter this season, right now, I'm inclined to give Joe Douglas another year. Because, again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. But if an executive is showing that he can do a job, an exemplary job in the offseason, I'm inclined to give him more opportunities to continue building that plan. I'm inclined to allow him to continue finding the right pieces to end this playoff drought. That's the first thing it tells me. You want to talk about Mike Williams, all the takeaways from it. The biggest takeaway is that Joe Douglas knows what he's doing, and some of the whining and complaining that was going on from Jet fans, very, very premature. Very premature. But that's not the only takeaway. The second takeaway has to do with the head coach. There were people that questioned, because of the anonymous sources coming out from The Athletic and other people, that Robert Saleh, as a head coach, was not good enough to handle the locker room. And because of all the white noise and the complaining going on throughout one Jets drive, that it would be very difficult to bring in free agents. This takeaway with Mike Williams signing shows it's all a bunch of bullshit. Absolutely bullshit. Robert Saleh is a player's coach. The numbers do not speak of a good coach right now. What is it? 7-14-3. 17 wins in 3 seasons. That's not good enough. No one would say that it is good enough. But Robert Saleh is building something just as Joe Douglas is. And Mike Williams is not just signing up because of the contract, because of Aaron Rodgers. He's signing up because he believes in what the Jets' plan is. And that's not the first time we have seen this, guys. Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time NFL MVP. He's going into the Hall of Fame. And last year, because people will argue he didn't have a market, he didn't have this, he chose the Jets. He could have retired and gone to the Hall of Fame. He chose to play for the New York Jets. He chose that because of the plan that Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas are building. Tyron Smith is an all-pro left tackle, arguably the greatest left tackle of the modern era. And he chose the Jets. And he carries a cap hit of $6 million. He chose to take less. That's not just because of Rodgers, guys. That's because Saleh's plan is something that players gravitate towards. They didn't overpay for these guys. Mike Williams making 1 year and up to $15 million is not an overpay. Tyron Smith signing a 1-year deal and carrying a cap hit of $6 million is not an overpay. The only theoretical overpay that the Jets gave so far in free agency is for Javon Kinlaw. Think about that. That's the one point where I would say that was an overpay. And that's not really even overpay because in Kinlaw, you trust that he can get after the passer consistently. You trust the defensive coaching staff consistently. Mike Williams signing to the New York Jets there's a lot of takeaways. But the top two are Joe Douglas knows what he's doing and Robert Saleh's got a plan, and that plan is what people are signing up for. Give him the opportunity to have the roster he needs. Again, I talked about this last year. I talked about it ad nauseum on the Jake Asman show. For those of you guys that are there, you guys can defend me on that. How many head coaches, logistically, actual seriousness, how many head coaches can build a winner with 13 different offensive linemen, 13 different offensive line combinations, and 4 different starting quarterbacks? How many guys lead their team to the playoffs? And the first thing people will say, well, Stefanski did it in Cleveland, so Saleh should be able to do that too. And the one thing that I point out when it comes to the Cleveland Browns run to the playoffs, and it was a magical run, and Stefanski did a hell of a job. Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, a lot of players went down. The Browns did not go through 13 different offensive linemen. They didn't go through 13 different combinations. When you get past 10 different combinations, you are in a world of trouble. A world of trouble. This is what I'm talking about. When you bring in Mike Williams in free agency, he's telling you he believes in Robert Saleh. He believes in the plan that the Jets are building. And yes, having Aaron Rodgers does not hurt the equation. But Rodgers chose to come here as well. He wasn't drafted. They all believe in the plan. Now, the only question is, can they stay healthy? Can they stay healthy enough to play a full 17 games at full strength to get to the playoffs? And I think the obvious answer here is yes. Especially if they trade out of 10, pick up Fortanu, pick up Christian Haynes in the second round, and a receiver in the third. If that's the plan, the Jets have an A+ draft for me. A+. Because they protect themselves for the long term. This is all about protection when things go to shit. The Jets didn't have good protection last year. They didn't have good contingency plans. They went all in on Rodgers and said, that's all we got to do. All we got to do. We're done. And they learned from that mistake this offseason. They have learned from the mistake of last year and said, we are going to just do everything in our power to make sure every position is filled. Every hole is filled. This is one of the best off seasons by any team this year. Any team. But this is one of the best off seasons in Jets history. They have made every correct move. Every correct move. This has been an unbelievable offseason for Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and everyone else. I'm going to get to some of your questions as well. If you guys want to call in again, the link in the YouTube description down below. Comment here from Mike Mars on Twitter. Add Troy Fautanu, AVT with more length, day one left guard, left tackle succession plan. This is my point. I completely concur. If you have Fautanu, and just watch the tape, guys, just watch the tape. He is, I think, a better Elijah Vera Tucker coming out of college. I think he can be even better than Elijah Vera Tucker. That's saying something. That is absolutely saying something. And if you're the Jets and you can trade down maybe to 17, maybe to 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Fautanu is still available, you have to take him. You have to take him. Because not only does that add protection if AVT were to go down, but it also adds protection to Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses and John Simpson. This is a guy that can play 4 different positions on the offensive line right now. He's a day one starter. Fautanu's a day one starter. And you could have him as your 5th offensive lineman. That's pretty damn good to me. That's something where if Philadelphia doesn't trade down, I could absolutely see Philadelphia taking him. I can absolutely see it. And I would be very happy as a member, as a fan of that team. I'd be happy to see Fautanu as an Eagle. But if you're the Jets, and again, I go back and I do this all the time with you guys. The fan and the reporter. The fan, you guys know where I lie. It's Eagles all the way. The reporter, I have to be objective. And it makes a lot of sense for the Jets to simply sit there and say, we can get Fautanu and have our left tackle of the future, or we can get another plug-and-play day one starter, accumulate another draft pick, and get our future left tackle all by trading down. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, Mike Mars. Question here from Johnny. Nick, who's your favorite, Johnny or Dano? You two guys are the best. You guys have been on pretty much every show I've had. Again, I can't appreciate you guys enough for all the questions, the call-ins. You guys have been absolutely awesome. I'm not going to broker a tie with this. I have 2 brothers. I know how to handle this. I love you both. Question here from John Gunning. Nick, do you think they will pick up another running back in free agency or in the draft? This is a great question, John. If you're New York, you need a guy at running back who knows how to play in the NFL, knows how to dissect blitzes, can pass block, understands the speed of the game. This is why I don't think the Jets should draft a running back in the 2024 draft. I think you can trust Izzy Abanikanda to develop, trust your development team. But if you need a free agent running back, and the running back I continue to target if I'm the Jets is J.K. Dobbins. I know he's not 100%. I know there's going to be questions about his Achilles. But the relationship he has with Aaron Rodgers, the relationship he has overall with the Jets, is something you cannot pass up. You can't pass it up at all. Dobbins makes sense. There's other free agent running backs as well. Ezekiel Elliott is another one who is still available and could absolutely help the organization right now. He had a good year in New England, Zeke. He's the kind of guy that you can trust, a better Dalvin Cook, to say, I'm going to get 4 yards and give Breece Hall enough time to conserve his energy for later in the game or later in the season. Zeke Elliott makes a hell of a lot of sense, as does J.K. Dobbins. It makes too much sense right now. And again, like I said, you can't draft a running back because then you have to get him up to speed in blitz packages. That is why Izzy Abanikanda didn't see the field until the Jets were essentially out of playoff contention. You want a guy that can play right away. Zeke, Dobbins, these guys can play right away. I understand Dobbins has the injury concern. You're waiting to see what he does. But still, you go with a veteran over a rookie in this case. Going through questions again, you guys want to call in? Link in the YouTube description down below on Football with Faria, a Wednesday edition. And, I was thinking about this yesterday. People jumped on Twitter to argue or agree. Some people from Philadelphia hated it. Some people from the Jets loved it, wanted me to rush to the podium now to accept the trophy. But there's one team, there's one organization, and one year in particular that I feel this Jets offseason mirrors almost to a T. And that's the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to break it down for you guys here because I really, really feel strongly about this. In 2017, Philadelphia came in, a young quarterback going into his second year with Carson Wentz. They had a lot of money in free agency. They had a lot of just situations that they could go down. They needed a number one receiver. They needed defensive line depth. They needed help in the secondary. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? What Philadelphia did, they had arguably the greatest offseason in the last decade. Every free agent move they brought in worked out. Nick Foles signed to a 2-year deal. A backup quarterback signing himself to a 2-year deal with injury concerns. Sounds a lot like Tyrod Taylor to me. Guy with starting experience, started one playoff game and lost. Seems like a deficient player because what you see is what you get. Signs a 2-year deal to be a backup quarterback for the face of the franchise. And it's one of the first moves that the Eagles made, and it's one of the first moves that the Jets made this year, signing Tyrod Taylor. We're going to keep it going because the similarities are really, really freaky. One of the other early moves in the offseason for Philadelphia was signing a number one receiver with injury concerns, question marks all over the field, but when healthy, was the kind of guy that they could trust to get downfield in a hurry and win one-on-one balls. That man's name was Alshon Jeffrey. Signed a 1-year, $14 million deal in free agency. Well, the Jets just yesterday signed Mike Williams, a deep ball threat, big play wideout, coming off injury concerns, to a 1-year, $15 million deal. So now we have similarities between the backup quarterback, the receiver. But wait, there's more. There's more. Don't worry. Chris Long, a veteran pass rusher, signed to a 2-year deal with the Eagles in 2017. And who are the Jets having to visit right now? Oh, yeah, Jadeveon Clowney. A veteran pass rusher, highly efficient, big sack numbers, former top overall pick, and you're telling me that the similarities aren't there, Long and Clowney? How about this for you? The Eagles also signed LeGarrette Blount to a one-year deal. Where do you think the Jets are going to go next, guys? A free agent running back on a one-year deal. Throw it further. Philadelphia, early on in free agency, made a trade for a third-round pick swap with the Baltimore Ravens for a defensive tackle named Tim Jernigan. Kind of like how the New York Jets made a trade with the Baltimore Ravens for an offensive tackle in Morgan Moses. They're having the same offseason. The New York Jets are having the same offseason as the Philadelphia Eagles did in 2017. The only question is going to be if it works out as well as it did before. Look at, guys, I want you to do this for me. Look at what the Jets have done in free agency right now. Look at what the Eagles did in free agency in 2017. You can't tell me the similarities stop at quarterback and wide receiver. It is uncanny. Uncanny, the similarities. Oh, and by the way, the director of player personnel in Philadelphia in 2017, Joe Douglas. Really freaky shit going on right now at Florham Park. I'll tell you that much. Got a call in from Johnny. Johnny, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, Nick? Hey, Nick, did you get your bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll sent to you yet? I think me and
I haven't
Dano.
gotten anything.
Yeah,
I haven't gotten anything.
Me and Dano sent one, so we're just.
It stops at beat reporters. The sandwiches stop at the beat reporters. It goes all the way to One Jets Drive. You got a whole truckload ready to go today.
Dude, did you? I don't know if you saw, but one of Jake's callers, he put his word out and was like, "Hey, something, right?" He was like, "I'm gonna do it today for Clowney." And hey, man, he did it, bro, to the point where the freaking the New York Jets were like, "Please stop sending food. Send it to the shelter that needs it." It was nuts, man.
Incredible.
But I did want to say something in regards of everything going on. First and foremost, JD is a beast. I think everybody knows that now. He's a monster, and he should be. If we win a Super Bowl or whatever, his statue needs to be put out in front of every bodega, deli in all of New York and New Jersey. But I think kind of going back to what Dano has been saying a lot, I really feel like we need to sign McGovern. We need to extend MC2 now, right, rather than later, over Hardy or whatever. I love Hardy, but I think those are key pieces that we need for depth right now in regards to Connor McGovern, right? But the other scenario I did want to kind of throw something out to you was something that nobody's talking about, and I wouldn't even put it past JD. Let's just go ahead and say that we do the trade back scenario, and you know that they love some defense, and they say the hell with it. They get a defensive player. The next 2 rounds, they go right ahead and get your lineman that could projectably be something later on for the future for ourselves. And then maybe in the 5th round, we get a wide receiver that could be a project. Now, I know that sounds nuts. I know that's crazy, but I really, really, really like this kid, the kid Gold, all right, Good, that's over there from Oregon State. Bro, his route running is amazing, and his hands and the contested catches that he has for being 5'9", right, is the type of player that I know Aaron likes, where they're more cerebral and really are like on their thing for route running. I think for him, what kills him is just his height. What did you think about that? What's your thoughts if something like that would happen and everybody have their riot gear ready if the Jets were to go defense in the 1st round?
Well, I think there's going to be riot gear going on at in Florham Park for draft night if the Jets were to trade down for a guy like Latu, the UCLA defensive end, and he's still a really good player. He's a great run defender, great edge rusher. You're not taking him in the 1st round if you're the Jets. It doesn't make any sense. Listen, I know there's going to be a lot of Jet fans terrified of this. And Johnny, thanks so much for the call. Do you have a second question?
No, that was it. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you calling on. There's going to be a lot of fans sweating it out on draft night, making sure that Douglas does not take a defensive player. I totally get it. I don't think he's taking a defensive player. Now that he has Aaron Rodgers, now that he has the draft board essentially at his fingertips, he's not going to trade back in the deepest offensive line class, in the deepest receiver class of the last decade to simply take a top pass rusher. Understand the argument. I get it. But I think it's more likely that the Jets take a quarterback over the Jets taking a defensive player. If Drake May falls to 10, not saying it's going to happen, not saying they should, but if Drake May falls to 10, you have to at least consider the opportunity of taking him in the first round and having your quarterback of the future when Aaron Rodgers officially retires. Has to be in consideration. There's no other argument against it. Another question here from John Gunning. One question: would you sign Justin Hardy even if it's a little bit more than his current deal due to his value on special teams? John, this is a good question, and I got to be honest. I think that Hardy's time is done. I really do. I think you have to trust what this special teams unit has done over the years. You brought back your punter. You brought back your kicker. You have to trust that the rest of the group can be coached up. And it's not just Hardy that is the reason for their success. Because it really isn't. They had some good success. You have Jarrett Bernard-Converse, who was drafted late last year in the draft. Didn't get a lot of playing time. I think he could be the eventual replacement for Hardy on special teams. And obviously a lot cheaper. It doesn't make sense to bring back Hardy for a little bit more money. You know, that kind of process. There's other ways to go where you're not spending an arm and a leg. Dane with a comment: can we please lock up Connor McGovern first and foremost, then extend Reed Carter before Hardy? Okay. Wes Schweitzer is your backup center, guys. He's under contract, and that's probably why Connor McGovern is not returning to the Jets. I could be wrong. But I don't see a path where Connor McGovern comes back to the Jets, especially if the Jets trade out of 10, take Fautanu, take Christian Haynes in round 2, because then you have your tackle, your guard, and a backup center all ready to go, and you don't have to spend massive amounts of cap hits on these veterans. You wouldn't have to do it. So, yes, I understand the point of Connor McGovern. I get it. I don't see a situation where the Jets bring back McGovern and all of that. Now, that being said, when it comes to the Reed and Carter extensions, absolutely, those long-term deals need to be sent out. We talked about early on in this show that Joe Douglas learned from his mistakes of last year. He has to prove that now with these players that are up for extensions. DJ Reed, Michael Carter. And I'll say, if they have to choose between Michael Carter and DJ Reed, you are choosing Michael Carter every day of the week. Slot cornerbacks as elite as him do not come around often. They do not come around often. You have to extend Michael Carter. You cannot do what you did with Bryce Huff. The argument against Bryce Huff was there. They drafted Will McDonald. They prepared for that loss. You are not prepared to have Michael Carter hit free agency. You must extend him for top dollar at slot cornerback. There's very, very few that are as good as Michael Carter in this league in the slot. You have to pay him as such. It's not an if, it's not a when, it's a must. An absolute must. Question here from Nate. I don't know what that is. Nate, is the new quarterback from San Francisco good on special teams? He's just, of course, talking about Isaiah Oliver, and yes, he is. Isaiah Oliver is a solid depth piece, very good special teamer. He also can be the replacement for Justin Hardy without having to pay more money for Justin Hardy. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Isaiah Oliver, good special teamer, has experience as a starting cornerback. Wasn't bad. Cheaper deal that Hardy gets? Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. Another question from Johnny. What's your take on Marvin Harrison Jr. and other players skipping combine and pro days? I don't mind it. I don't know where this clutching of the pearls came from, players deciding to sit out pro days and combines. We have to remember, it happens rarely, but there are situations where top players going into their pro days suffer a gruesome injury and they tank their draft stock and lose out on millions of dollars. The number one player that comes to my mind, actually, ironically enough, we're talking about the 2017 Eagles, is Sidney Jones out of Washington. Sidney Jones was a cornerback out of Washington that was considered one of, and if not the best cornerback prospect of the draft. Top player. Quintessential, was going top 20 without a doubt. And what happened? He went into his pro day, and it was either a torn ACL or a torn Achilles. And he dropped to the second round. He didn't play his first full season, and he's been bouncing around the NFL ever since. He lost out on millions of dollars, maybe even a Hall of Fame career. Because you don't know. Maybe he gets drafted to a spot that is better prepared for a player of his caliber. We don't know what would have happened. But Sidney Jones participated in his pro day and lost out on millions. Players will look at that and say, it's not worth it. It's not worth doing a small little workout, potentially getting hurt, tanking my draft stock for no reason other than to make some fans happy. Notice, many people have already reported this. Marvin Harrison spoke to NFL teams, NFL scouts, and said, do you need me to work out? And they told him no. No. That should be enough for fans. That should be enough for people questioning if he made the right choice or not. You are there. Players are there to protect themselves and get the most money possible on draft day. Marvin Harrison is the best non-quarterback in this draft class. If he were to get hurt, he would lose out on a top 5 pick and millions of dollars. It would make no sense. No sense. It's not even, and again, Johnny's question, and he makes the point of he doesn't mind it. It's not even whether I mind it or not. It's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. There are players whose lives have been altered forever because they participated in their pro day, got hurt, and never were able to recover. If players feel that that's the right choice, they have every reason not to. And it's not up to fans. It's not up to Twitter warriors. It's not up to personal radio guys that were complaining about it. Marvin Harrison has every reason not to attend and play and practice in his pro day. Every reason not to. This isn't a problem. This is quintessential a player taking care of his body, and it should be celebrated, not something that gets discussed. And it's going to be, I get it, it's wrong. Marvin Harrison has to take care of himself. He has to make sure that he is 100% for whatever team drafts him. And if he gets hurt in his pro day, he's losing out on millions of dollars. Life-changing money. There's no second thought to me. No second thought. Got about 10 minutes. of our program here today. We got about 676 people watching. Thank you guys so much. You guys want to call in, please do. But I do want to end on the Jadeveon Clowney news. Now, Clowney is in for a visit with the New York Jets. As of right now, I haven't heard anything on how it's going, what's going to happen, does the deal get signed. The thing that I will point out, though, when it comes to the Jets and when it comes to a player like Clowney is a guy, and this is said on JetCast, and I absolutely agree with it. Clowney's a mercenary. He wants his money, his deal, his situation, and he will go out and wreck quarterbacks for you. People argued all the time, did the Jets make the right decision to let Bryce Huff go? Did they make the right decision letting a homegrown player leave in free agency? And at best, getting just a third round, fourth round compensatory pick. If you bring in Jadeveon Clowney, yeah, they kind of made the right decision. Kind of did. Because here's the reason why. Bryce Huff right now is one of the best edge rushers in football and a below adequate run defender. He's solid, but he's not someone that you can trust as of right now to be a 3-down defender. Maybe he grows into it. But right now, Philadelphia is paying him to be a pass rusher. Jadeveon Clowney is an above-average run defender and an elite pass rusher. He had 9.5 sacks last season for a Baltimore defense that literally set an NFL record for being the first team ever to lead the league in points allowed, turnovers, and sacks. Clowney was second on the team in sacks last year? This is a no-brainer to me. Not only would this be an upgrade, an all-around upgrade for the defense, because Clowney was a leader with Baltimore. He has those leadership possibilities. But you get a guy that can stop the run. And I get it. Most teams aren't really worried about that anymore. Philadelphia is and Pittsburgh is. And all these teams are sort of saying, we'll forget the run as long as we can get after the passer. But this is a no-brainer too. This is absolutely a no-brainer move for Joe Douglas. If you bring in Jadeveon Clowney, you can arguably say that the Jets upgraded at almost every position they signed in free agency. Tyrod Taylor, upgrade over Zach Wilson. Mike Williams, upgrade over Alan Lazard. Tyron Smith, upgrade over Mekhi Becton. John Simpson, upgrade over Laken Tomlinson. Morgan Moses, upgrade over whoever was the rotating guy at right tackle. Jadeveon Clowney, whether we like it or not, is a better overall defender against the run than Bryce Huff. And he clearly has the ability to rush the passer at a high clip. Maybe not as high a clip as Bryce Huff, but just good enough to make sure that the Jets look at it and say, we got the better player because we got the guy that can stop the run and play 3 downs. That's a fundamental difference that the Jets could be looking at. And maybe Clowney goes for a contract like $6-9 million, $6 to $9 million on a 1-year deal. That's still really good value because Bryce Huff is making an annual average of $17 million. He's making around $17 million annually. I know his cap hit this year is around $3 million. I get it. But Tyron Smith, Mike Williams, Simpson, Moses, Kinlaw, potentially Clowney, all of these guys are available because you didn't overspend to overpay to keep one of your homegrown talents. Sometimes you have to know when it's right to let a player walk. And the Jets did that. And that's why I kept saying throughout the entire time people were upset about it. It's not the end of the world if Bryce Huff leaves. This is kind of the next example. Kind of the next example. Seriously, like Clowney, for all of his problems, is he worthy of being a former number 1 overall pick? No. No. But is he good enough and is he reliable enough to be an every down pass rusher, every down defensive end that Bryce Huff was not objectively? Yes. Yes. There's no other way to put it. There's no other defense to it. Bryce Huff's a really good edge rusher. He's really good at what he does, and he's being paid handsomely for it. But Jadeveon Clowney it's not like he's 34, 35 years old. He's 31, coming off a 9.5 sack season on a defense that also comes after you in pass rushing waves. Who had an all-pro defensive tackle record over 10 sacks last year and Justin Madubuike. The similarities are there to make Clowney have an excellent 2024 season with the New York Jets. The question only comes down to if Clowney wants to go back to Baltimore or if a team is willing to overpay him more than the Jets are going to be able to afford him. One final call for today. It's going to be going to Dano.
Mic check.
Yeah, you're good, man. You're good.
Hey, I just wanted to chime in. I know Johnny took a lot of my points, but I wanted to chime in about the Reed, his contract situation. I think it would behoove us to extend him, yes, but be careful of the timing, because I think once we start paying Sauce the real big bucks, we have to have him gone. So, like, I don't know, like, if I was JD, I would try to approach it like, DJ, you know, give us 2 years right now, and we can have you out the door and signing a monster deal somewhere else, perhaps, before you hit 30.
Yeah.
He's 27 right now, like, I mean, the alternative is we get him this year and we don't get him for 25, or we give him several years and then we have to juggle paying him and Sauce at the same time and MC. So I think the timing of that deal will be interesting. I really do hope that we have a way of getting him for this the 2-year window, though, because some other people were wanting to like trade him now, and I'm not for that. But I do prioritize MC. I think it's the hardest position in the game to not have the sideline helping you. But yeah, I do.
Let me ask you though, because I think this is where people are starting to get a little confused here. If it's between Reed or Carter, who are you giving the long-term extension to?
Personally, I'm trying to get Carter 3 or 4 years first.
I agree. I think the focus should not be Reed. The focus should be Carter, because you can find a second corner opposite Sauce Gardner. You can do it. You already did it. Brandon Eccles is still on the roster. He's a starter
100%.
corner.
See, and I think and if you pay MC first too, then I think the writing will be on the wall for Reed. Like,
yeah,
you're not in the long-term plans. We do want you, but you know, we're going to be giving Sauce $30 million a year. Like, so you can either stay with Sauce and form the best duo for the next 4 or 5 years at a team-friendly 9-10 million AAV, and compete for rings, or you can go be a number 1 somewhere else. And I don't know that he craves the spotlight more than being with Sauce and being the best together. So he's like the definition of a Jet to me. So, but you know, the middle ground I think is you get him 2 years and he goes and gets the money after we have our 2 runs. So
it's going to be interesting. Thanks so much for the call, Dano. Appreciate it. And listen, he makes some very good points. A 2-year deal for Reed right before he hits, you know, the twilight of his career could certainly be up for consideration for the Jets. But to me, if you're New York and you want to make sure that you prepare yourself for the long term, you give the contract to Michael Carter. If it's between Carter or Reed, take Carter 100%. And if that means trading Reed a year early or whatever, so be it. because we have seen this defense succeed without him against some really damn good offenses too. Some damn good offenses. Not the end of the world if DJ Reed's on the chopping block, guys. Not with the way the offense looks now with Mike Williams in tow. Potentially Jadeveon Clowney on defense too. Something to think about. Appreciate all of you guys for jumping on today at 6 o'clock. So I have to get going. We'll be back Friday morning. We're going to get things rolling there. Hopefully, maybe we'll talk about a potential Jadeveon Clowney signing, what's going to go happening throughout the NFL, maybe some Eagles talk as well. So if you guys want to jump on and complain about any other team, jump on. We'll be on for Friday morning. Thank you guys so much for listening and have a great night.